All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Kremer. I'm a senior partner SE at VMware. It's been about 2.5 years. I've been working for VMware. Prior to that, I spent somewhere around 10 years with a primary job role of delivering virtualization solutions, vSphere. I've done delivery consulting. I've been in Fortune 500. I've a little small 3-person web hosting company. So I've been around, seen a bunch of environments. And Ryan's with me to help deliver this today.
Hi, my name is Ryan Conley. I'm a solutions consultant with VMware. I've been with VMware about 3 years. I got my start as an SE. But prior to that, I was in IT for 13 years, starting with education, was a consultant for 7 years, and then most recently worked for a hedge fund in San Francisco, and then joined VMware.
So we decided to do this. I did a podcast with Paul Woodward, Explore VM, and it had a lot of interest on shifting to a pre-sales role. A lot of people who are in tech are maybe curious about pre-sales, not really sure what's involved in doing pre-sales. I got a ton of feedback after I did that podcast, a lot of hits, a lot of conversations going back and forth on Twitter. And we thought we'd throw a session in here and just sort of tell you guys all about our experience shifting into pre-sales. So I think we'll start off, Ryan, what made you decide to switch into a pre-sales role?
So as most people in IT, you're dealing with vendor management, like managing your VMware SE, your VMware account rep. But as a customer, if you're not an enterprise, I traditionally didn't have access to an SE, so they didn't exist. But I was at a happy hour with my VMware AE, who I had a good relationship with, just like my storage vendors, et cetera. And he said, hey, we're going to have an SE position open in the Bay Area. Are you interested? And his exact words were, I think you'd crush it. So I went home, updated my resume, and applied the next day.
Yeah, for me, I wasn't specifically looking for pre-sales. I just was looking for a job at VMware, and I followed VMware careers on Twitter, and one day a random tweet pops up, and it says, VMware position in Chicago, and I'm like, I know VMware, I'm in Chicago, so maybe I didn't really think about the pre-sales portion. I just thought, I've dedicated the last 10 years of my career to VMware technology, so hey, I'm gonna go apply and kind of see what happens. So after getting hired, I know the transition was a little interesting for me. How did it go for you, shifting into pre-sales?
So coming from a generalist background, I always did network, storage, a little bit of security, et cetera. I thought it'd be great to no longer have to focus on Cisco Call Manager, limit my networking, less exchange work, et cetera. But just like any IT job, it's drinking from the fire hose. So even being the quote-unquote VMware guy at my last company, I walked in, I'm like, I had no idea we had so many solutions for so many products and needs, and that constantly changes. So if you're thinking that it's going to be simple, it's simpler, but just like anything IT, there's always multiple ways to do it. But fortunately, I had a great team. Several of us all started as VMware added field headcount. We were all getting started together. We have great leadership. It's a good culture. VMware, just like another vendor, would offer a lot of training, so you're able to kind of focus on what you want to learn and decide what's most relevant for your current role, but also how will that benefit customers that you're interacting with.
Yeah, for me, I started at the end of a half. So, when you've been in pre-sales for a while, that's just closing time. So everybody's heads are down, and it's just, get the business closed at the end. So my first real exposure was a sales kickoff the following month after I got hired. And one of my biggest fears was, am I going to lose my technical edge? Am I going to become somebody who doesn't know what I'm doing because I'm selling and not touching? And when you're at a sales kickoff, it's very sort of, rah-rah and go team, because that's, it's a unity kind of thing. And I kind of come away from that thinking, man, like, what did I get myself into? I really might lose my edge, And it's tough at first, because you're like, hey, you feel awesome, like, I got hired by VMware, look at me, I'm the greatest, right? And it really is sort of an ego punch when you realize, yeah, you're awesome. You're 400 level with this much of VMware's technology. Well, guess what? You now cover every product in the portfolio, and you have to learn enough to get in front of a customer and not have them take your head off technologically. So it was a harder transition for me initially.
I'd say for me, it's just like any other IT role. So I went from having old, Dell 2950s with an old Ecologic set aside as a home lab. So joining VMware, I had to invest in myself, so I purchased a home lab, and then started doing the same things I did as an IT admin. So before I would do an upgrade, whether it be vSphere, Exchange, whatever, I would do it in a test environment first. And so I just took those methodologies and applied that to my learning. So again, focus on what's most relevant, decide what you want to learn for fun, but what you also need to learn for your role, and then do that in the lab. So that kind of gives you the opportunity to stay focused on what you want to learn. I was still pursuing VCAP certification, so still learning those advanced techniques that I wanted to learn for myself, but then also learning techniques or different ways of doing different projects that I could then advocate with customers. And it's all the same methodologies that I did as an admin, just now I'm doing it on the VMware solutions, or how do they integrate with third parties, like HITrust and Puppet, et cetera.
Yeah, I'll echo that with the home lab. I mean, I think that's the single most important investment in myself that I made, is to have my own gear that I know how I configured it, and I can deploy and install stuff and play with stuff. It's very different going into hands. I use hands-on labs. We get them internally too. We get sort of a different cloud, but we can run them internally. And it's one thing to learn how the product works after somebody else has installed it, but it's just not the same as dropping the bits and downloading it and installing it yourself, right? So, I didn't actually purchase my home lab until, I don't know, almost 2 years into the 3.5 years that I've been here, and I kind of wish I had just bit the bullet and just done it right off the bat. I think it would have helped during some of the transition, right?
And there's different use cases. If you actually want to do a quote-unquote POC, you don't really so much care about standing it up. You care about actually testing the feature sets. Where if you're actually going to do the implementation, that's where actually spin it up in a home lab or a non-prod environment before going live with it in prod helps.
Yeah. So public speaking, right? Here we are. We're up front. I would have never dreamed of standing here under lights and a camera, right, before I did this role. How were you public speaking prior?
So I'm a little more naturally gifted at public speaking, just fortunately, but it's an item to where went out of the gate, again, drinking from the fire hose, but I just started jumping in on customer meetings. I had a peer, so I was able to just audit his sessions as he's having customer conversations remotely, and that kind of got me up to speed with actually customer conversations. But then there's also other avenues. So if you want, you can elect, regardless who you work for, you can elect to go speak at your local vMugs or other chapter events. I, for example, have a personal thing that I do every year where I actually get up in front of 250 people I know, and I end up being the MC because no one else wants to do it. So I'll be doing that next week at Road America if anyone's up there. But because of that experience, I was more just adept at speaking at vMugs. Like 2 weeks into the job, I was at a Chico IT community event. There was like 60 people. I got up there, talked about, it was right after vSphere 6 dropped. And it was no problem. But other guys, they have to go to Toasters or the other solution to try and get a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more familiar with what to do, what not to do, and kind of get more comfortable in your own skin. But that's an elective thing. Really the focus with being in a pre-sales role is you are going to be customer facing, whether it be remote or in person. And there's different techniques if you're remote, some tips and tricks that are online. We're happy to probably do some show notes. But then in person is just connecting. So if whiteboarding's best for you, whiteboard. If PowerPoint's best for you, PowerPoint. I personally, being a customer, I try to avoid PowerPoint as much as possible and just trying to have a more direct conversation with a customer. And my goal and my team's goal are to be the trusted advisor in the room. And regardless who you work for, that's probably what you want to do. We're pre-sales, but we're not sales. We're the engineers in the room. So we want to have, I'll talk tech shop all day long.
Yeah, when I first started, right, this was me, right? I'm going to grip the podium. I'm not leaving the podium, and and then it's funny too, because some podiums that have been used for a while, you can actually see finger marks, actual dents in the wood, because people are so scared being up front. So my boss Jeff actually sent me to Dale Carnegie public speaking training, and that was really sort of a huge eye opener in what people are looking for, kind of get rid of the shift back and forth, and just plant and talk. And there's training out there available, I guess, is the point, to kind of get rid of some of the jitters. And it was great for me. So.
And a good quote's from Duncan Epping here. He had a blog post a couple years ago, and he's a big guy in terms of the tech community, but he said he always gets scared before going on stage. So it'll never go away, but it's just there's ways to manage it.
Yeah. So, well, getting close to closing. So, what do you like about the pre-sales role?
Number one thing that I love is not being on call.
Preach. Oh my God.
So I was on call for 7 years of my life, most recently in finance. I gave up a lot of weekends, a lot of evenings. We all know that you have to do those after-hour projects, whether it's updates for regular maintenance or those individual projects where you're cutting over. And that's just the life of an IT is you're always going to be working after hours or weekends, but moving to a pre-sales role, it's a little bit more standardized, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. If the customer is having a scenario, they're still going to reach out to you and you want to help them out, but on a day-to-day basis, it's a much more, 8 to 5 style role.
Yeah, about 6 months into the role, my wife says to me, she's like, man, you're much calmer than you've been before. And I realized, before, every time my phone off, it was like, what? Any hour of the day, anytime I heard something ding, right? Is it a severity 1 ticket? Are you calling me? Do I have to fix something? Is it going to ruin a birthday party? We've all had it on call, right? Birthday party ruined, can't go somewhere, you're scheduling vacations around the rotation, and it's hard. It's hard. So being able to let go of that, right, I think is the number one. And number two, if you really love the place that you work for, right? I spent 10 years dedicating my career to VMware stuff. If you really believe in what the company has to sell and you believe in their mission, it's actually really fun to go out and talk to customers and say, look, I've got this and this and this that can solve this and this and this problem. It's really like a puzzle, right? How can I fit what we've got to fixing your business problems? So I guess maybe that's sort of the final bit of wisdom before we're done is IT isn't here to do cool tech stuff. IT is here to serve the business. So if I'm going to give you any career advice, the closer you get to the mission of your business, the more successful you're going to be. I am directly in the money flow of our business, and it doesn't really get a whole lot closer to the mission of the business than that. And I'm rewarded with speaking engagements and abilities to go to conferences like this and share knowledge, and it's because I'm focused on the mission of the business. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Ryan?
All good.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate you coming.